So Utah has this unique history with women and women's roles and women's rights in the state. Right. We mentioned earlier that it's in the Constitution that women are guaranteed equal rights here in the state of Utah. We also were among the first to have the right to vote. We're actually second. So we clearly value women, women's beliefs, women's ideas, women's input. But recently there was a study that came out that says that we are now have fallen to 50 out of 50 in women's equality. In women's equality. And part of that is due to our pay scale. You know, we're 70 cents on the dollar for a man. And so we're really working as a state to show that we're better than that we can do better than that we actually are better than that we value women, that we value everyone's voice, not just one voice. And so we're seeing this ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, as an important part to that, an important component to that. Absolutely. How do you respond to that? How do you think that would affect Utah?
Well, I think you would be able to be very proud because you go from a starting point that is absolutely spectacular. I mean, to have an Equal Rights Amendment in the 1890s or something like that, that's crazy good, right? And
Very
then
impressive.
to be one of the first that allow women the right to vote, what a perfect bookend, if you will, to now be the state, the 38th state, that pushes us over the line, that says, yes, now this is going to be a part of the Constitution. You have the ability to play that role then, and now you have it again here. That would be such a statement for Utah. And you know, we talked a little bit about you know, being pro-business, which is a very important thing for everybody, but in particular I think Republicans value that in a very great way. What a great message to send to the world and the business world, saying we're here for women. We are on board. It might have taken a little while to pass this one, but we're here and we made it real. We were the 38th.
Can you talk a little bit about, back us up a little and talk about what it will take, why we need the 38th state to ratify this?
Sure, so that's part of the U.S. Constitution, the requirements for how we amend the U.S. Constitution. First it has to be passed, a resolution has to be passed in the Congress, the House and the Senate. That was done in about 1972. And then it is given to the states. And then the number that became was 38 states. So in order to get to the threshold that the Constitution requires to pass the ERA and make it law among all states, not just the states that pass it, all states, we need 38. And so right now we sit at 37. Illinois was 37. Nevada, one of your neighbors, was 36. So we're ready to make Utah the 38th.
So are we.
And the win.
Right,
for the win.
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let's talk about this. Came up in the 70s.
Right.
That's when this was introduced. Why did it not pass then, and why does it feel like this is a good time for this to pass?
So things have changed a lot since the 1970s, and I think it's changed for the positive in pretty much all respects. People's views of the value of diversity have changed and evolved, and so I think the country is ready for this. Okay. So that's a very positive thing in my mind for our whole country. Why did it stop? It stopped, quite honestly, because of one woman. Her name was Phyllis Schlafly from Illinois, who likened this to abortion on demand. I can assure you that we have looked at this 6 ways from Sunday. I'm not going to get into the weeds on why, but it's simply not true. As I said earlier, because men can't get pregnant, you can't say that you're discriminated against women or men because of something that only applies to women. So abortion is not an issue. I understand, I am a pro-life Republican, and I support the ERA because I know that this has nothing to do with abortion, nothing.
Let's talk a little bit more about this idea of equality and why this is needed.
Sure.
Because there are a lot of arguments that we feel equal. There are a lot of people who think this has already passed because people feel equal.
And I've heard that from legislators. I heard that today from legislators here in your state capitol. Here's my question to anyone. Do you honestly feel like the rights of women and men are truly equal today? If the answer is yes, you feel like everything is hunky-dory, everything is good, then I guess we don't need it. But the truth is, I think if people really look at the situation, look at the facts, what they're going to realize is, yeah, we've come a long way. We really have. This isn't the 70s, but we are not there yet. We're absolutely not there. Pay equity is not there. A variety of inherently biased situations occur, even culturally. We're not even talking about breaking the law, but even culturally, no one can tell me honestly with a straight face that men and women are equal yet. That's why we need it, even as a symbol, if nothing else, of the fact that we as a nation support this concept. That is so critical. So unless you tell me everything is fine, 100% equal, that's another reason why we need it.
Right, and one of the things that drives that is that equality it's not an emotion, right? It actually isn't a feeling. Equality is a metric.
Right.
And so when people say they feel equal, that doesn't hold a lot of water, because
Right.
what we want is metrics, and we know by metrics that we have
That
from
there's still
data that there's a
inequality.
huge gap there.
There is, and it's true in Illinois too. We did a lot of work on pay equity as well, separate from the ERA, and I'm very proud of that work. But it bolsters, the ERA bolsters that work. Like I said, even if someone convinces me this isn't going to be law, even after the 38th state, which I don't accept, but even if that were true, the mere symbolism of the United States saying yes to this is critical for women to know, yes, they are valued. They are valued equally, that we all stand together, not separately.
And one of the big things about this, for me and many people involved in this movement, is that it alters the Bill of Rights, right?
Well, it alters the amendments to the Constitution. The Bill of Rights is just the first 10, right? This is just tacking another one at the end. So,
Right.
but it does.
And it's a permanent.
It's permanent.
It's this permanent change.
I mean, I suppose you could say theoretically it could be changed. There was the amendment that created alcohol prohibition. That was passed and then repealed.
True.
So it's not impossible, but it's nearly impossible to do this, especially on something as widely respected, widely viewed as the right thing to do as the Equal Rights Amendment.
Let's talk a little bit about the deadline passing for the ERA.
Right.
How do you respond to that when somebody makes the argument that this
Long
doesn't
since
count?
expired,
Yes.
right? Because the original bill that went through the House and the Senate on the federal level had a deadline, a
Exactly.
date, long since expired, long since expired. And that's, I mean, I can't argue that it's not expired, it is. But I don't believe that that was ever valid. And the way I'd like you to think about this is the Constitution tells us how to amend the Constitution. It's got steps. Bills in the House, bill in the Senate, passes 3/5 in both houses, both chambers, then it goes to 3/5 of the state, right? Did you hear me say anything about a timeline? You didn't, because there isn't a timeline in the Constitution. So I don't believe that timeline or that time limitation is valid because it conflicts with the actual Constitution. Think about it this way. Let's say that the same Congress proposes a different amendment, but says, in addition to what the Constitution says, 100% of the states have to pass it or it's not valid. I think everyone can see the Constitution decides when something's passed, not the bill itself. And so the argument is the same here, that deadline was never really valid. And my view is that that's an easy argument to win.
Right. You've been working with Utah legislators today, meeting with them, talking with
Yes.
them about this. How are they thinking about this and receiving this information? Do they know what it is? Are they interested in passage?
Well, I've talked to a variety. I've talked to Democrats and Republicans. The Democrats are very enthused about it, and I've been told they've been introducing it for many years, so that's not much of a surprise. But I was very positively impressed with the willingness of both the Republican leadership and some of the rank and file that I talked to consider the issue. I don't think that there's been a lot of attention to it here yet. And a matter of fact, some of your leadership appreciated the fact that I came now in September. Thank you.
You
We're
got it
about
real
to be
close.
October. It's about to be October. But in September, rather than during their session, so that there's not that high pressure to try to deal with something or a bum's rush, they said they very much appreciated the fact that we could have a much more relaxed conversation about it and brainstorm about all the issues we've been talking about today. So I was very positively impressed.
Tell us what we can do as constituents. If you had a recommendation that you could give to women, men, people who are interested in the Equal Rights Amendment passing,
Right.
I mean, what do you do if you feel a little powerless in this. What would you recommend for us to do when reaching out? Is it best to reach out to the your state legislator? What is best to do?
So anything you can imagine is probably good, but I think there are a couple of important things, especially in a state as Republican as Utah is this is not going to be about negative pressure. And what I mean by that is calling out these legislators as racist if they don't sign on to the bill. That's not going to help, okay? That's going to hurt. What we have to do is we have to provide positive pressure. And what I mean by that is when you have a representative who's a Republican who's thinking about this, one of the things he or she is going to think about is, what's this going to do to my next reelection campaign? Not the general, probably their primary. Are they going to have an opponent in their primary because of this? You know what they need to hear? They need to hear that you are going to be there for them, not just today when you're asking for their vote and then you disappear, you evaporate after the vote is taken. They need to know that you're willing to help them when that time comes if they need it, that you're willing to knock doors with them, that you're willing to go to their fundraisers, that you're willing to fundraise and donate so that they know that you are there for them when they need you. And like I said, I don't think people are going to get primaried over this issue because there is so much widespread support for it. But I'm not a Utah legislator, so maybe they don't share that security that I do. You got to give them some backup. You got to promise them that we are Republicans as well as Democrats. If it's just Democrats, this won't pass in Utah. But if it's Republicans and Democrats, and we've got your back, we will help you when you need it because you're helping us when we do. That's how you change people's minds. And good policy too, but we're talking politics.
Right.
So.
Right. So one of the unique things about this amendment is that there's a lot of talk about it, there's a lot of hubbub, there has been in the past, but the actual language, when you look at it, 24 words.
Right. It's tiny.
It's so simple.
Right. And some of them aren't even needed. So it's not even that long, if you will. Yeah, and that's an interesting point because one of the things that you hear Republicans quite commonly say is we don't want activist judges, right? We want them just to interpret the plain language of the Constitution. Well, if you interpret the plain language of this constitutional amendment, there's nothing scary about it. There's nothing mysterious about it. All of the bad things that aren't going to happen are if you interpret it broadly, which we're asking judges not to do. If you just interpret the simple language of it, it's don't discriminate against people based on their sex. Period. The end.
So simple, so straightforward.
Exactly.
When you envision this passing and this amendment becoming a part of our lives, how do things change? What does life look like post-ERA?
I think that it just continues on the course we're already on, but I hope it accelerates it a little bit so that I think what you'll see is that there will be zero attempts to create new laws that might discriminate against women. But I think what you'll also see is a cultural shift, one where people will simply grow up with the proposition that men and women both belong in the boardroom, they both belong in the legislature, they belong everywhere. And you can use previous examples of that. Women gained the right to vote. I think that at that time the opponents were saying the world was going to end if that happened.
Right.
Didn't end. I know, shocking, right?
Right.
Didn't end. African Americans were given the right to vote after the Civil War. Oh my God, the world is going to end. Didn't end. Marriage between different races. The world is going to end. God is going to oppose this. He was okay with it. So I think that the fears are really, really unjustified. But the thing that is justified is an optimism about where we go as a people and a culture.
Good job. That was great.